Ukrainian grandmothers are arming themselves with machine guns, while the country turns into a cemetery of nuclear waste waiting for a second Chernobyl accident as Poland begins annexing Ukrainian cities. Russian disinformation never stops, but neither will the truth autopsies here at StopFake, the place where we've been debunking fake news from Russia for 5 years now. So let's get to it. Earlier this month, REN TV, Rambler, Izvestia, and other disinformation outlets announced that Ukrainian pensioners are being called upon to arm themselves so they can protect the country from Russia. They all cite a member of Kyiv City Council, Yuri Sorotyuk, from the right-leaning Svoboda party, as the source for this new geriatric mobilization. During a youth forum held in Kyiv at the end of August, Sorotyuk called for every old woman in the country to be given a machine gun so that Ukraine can stand up for itself. REN TV quoted Sorotyuk as saying, "Only when every grandmother has a machine gun and a sharp knife, Russian little green men will simply be cut down." Well, we found the original recording of Sorotyuk's talk at the youth forum on YouTube, and the truth is a bit of a far cry from the Russian distortion. Now, Sorotyuk does indeed speak about the need to issue weapons to Ukrainians in order to counter Russian aggression, but Russian media have taken his meeting out of context, focusing only on the idea of arming retired grannies. So what did Sorotyuk actually say? Well, here's another quote. "We feel that Ukraine cannot support a huge professional army. Therefore, every citizen of Ukraine must be able to protect themselves. The formula in Ukraine should be like in Switzerland, a peaceful, well-armed Ukrainian people. They will not attack us only when Putin knows that in every house, every grandmother has a machine gun, a pistol, and a sharp knife." Last week, the pro-Kremlin website Ukraina.ru was again spreading disinformation that a second Chernobyl is brewing in Ukraine. Now remember, Ukraina.ru is part of the Russia Today state-owned media holding company, and in a lengthy article, the publication claims that in order to spite Russia, Ukraine has built a new nuclear waste facility right under the city of Kyiv. Instead of reclaiming the contaminated 30-kilometer Chernobyl exclusion zone, Ukrainian authorities are turning the country into a nuclear dumping ground, Ukraina.ru claims, blaming not only Ukraine for this, but also Ukraine's Western partners. According to Ukraina.ru, quote, "Ukraine used to send nuclear waste to Russia for processing. Now it is patriotically storing it on its native God-given land close to the capital, and only because Western nuclear companies want to compete with Rosatom and use the nuclear waste repository for their own purposes." Rosatom is Russia's state atomic energy corporation, and just like in other nuclear scaremongering stories, the disinformation blames the impending doom on Ukraine's cooperation with its Western partners. The reality is that a new facility was opened in the Chernobyl zone in July of last year, that is 2018. The thing is, it's not a nuclear waste repository, but a radioactive liquid waste processing plant. This plant only processes nuclear waste from the Chernobyl disaster. The processing involves several stages of transformation, turning the liquid waste into solids through a cementing, a process that's considered safer for storage. On September the 5th, the plant converted the first 120 bins of solid waste, which will be placed in a nearby nuclear waste storage facility, guaranteeing 300 years of safe disposal. And most importantly, this nuclear burying ground, as Ukraina.ru calls it, is not new. It's been operating since 2008. Remember, Russian disinformation breaks down very quickly when the facts come out. Ever since the HBO miniseries about Chernobyl was released, Ukraine has seen a jump in tourism to the Chernobyl site. But in a classic example of black-as-white disinformation, Ukraina.ru also claims that the new plant is crippling development of tourism in the Chernobyl exclusion zone because it contains dangerous radiation levels. But this is just another pablum fake because the processing plant is located in the 10-kilometer restricted zone around Chernobyl that tourists are not allowed to enter. One of the hallmarks of disinformation is to also cause confusion, and Ukraina.ru does this very well, saying that by commissioning its own nuclear waste treatment plant, Ukraine stopped sending radioactive waste for processing to Russia on purpose so as to annoy the Kremlin. The publication deliberately confuses two nuclear processing facilities, the Chernobyl processing facility operating since 2008, and a new facility, the centralized spent nuclear fuel storage facility being built in the exclusion zone. Because Ukraine had no central plant for storing spent nuclear fuel, it's been spending $200 million annually to transport and process its spent nuclear fuel in Russia. So why build a new facility? Well, according to the Joint Convention on the Safety of Spent Radioactive Fuel Management, the first legal instrument to address the issue of spent fuel and radioactive waste management on a global scale, going forward from 2020, all nuclear waste must be stored on the territory of the state where it was produced. And this convention, which Ukraine ratified back in the year 2000, is part of the International Atomic Energy Agency. So, the new centralized storage facility under construction will solve the problem of spent nuclear fuel. But the project has been on again, off again since 2000. However, back in 2014, the design was finally approved, and the construction that started in November of 2017 is in its final stages. And the new facility means that Ukraine will no longer be completely dependent on Russia for nuclear waste management. This has been a vulnerable position for Ukraine that Russia can exploit at its whim. Ukraina.ru has created a new kind of fake story based on a series of old fakes, essentially mixing apples and oranges, making absurd claims, and confusing three different facilities. Remember, Russian media never let facts get in the way of their disinformation. Russian and Ukrainian media recently featured stories about Polish trains decorated with transit maps with the Ukrainian cities of Lviv, Lutsk and Rivne as part of the Polish rail system within Polish borders. They also emphasized that this territorial scandal coincided with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Poland. The train in question was in fact launched in 2018, and the map painted on the train, which does include these three Ukrainian cities, reflects historical post-World War I realities when the Second Polish Republic included the cities of Lviv, Lutsk and Rivne. Although they were launched in 2018, pro-Kremlin media and their Ukrainian followers have only just noticed these trains, and after several emotionally charged posts that appeared on social media, did they begin to write about them, which is also a telltale sign of troll involvement. That is, to create a scandal, to then draw attention to something that is much ado about nothing. Polish Sputnik, part of the Russian disinformation network, claims that Ukrainians are pouring out their outrage on social media. Even the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic got into the game, tweeting, "Poland is re-evaluating maps and including Western Ukrainian cities on them." And then the site Strana.ua picked up Sputnik's story and linked it to the Ukrainian president's visit to Poland. Strana wrote, quote, "On the day of Zelensky's visit, Poles were accused of territorial claims. Photos of the Rzeszów-Peremyśl train with maps featuring Lviv, Rivne and Lutsk as part of Poland appeared on social media." Now, Strana.ua is a notorious fake factory outlet in Ukraine that retransmits disinformation from Russian sources. Most people in Ukraine know that it is a haven for pro-Russian propaganda. Meanwhile, Poland's rail company, Polregio, said the new train design was intended to mark the 100th anniversary of the return of Polish independence. The new train is not green and blue like Poland's other trains, but red and white, the national colors of Poland. And the colors and design reflect historical events of the post-World War I period. The design uses the figure of Polish statesman Marshal Józef Pilsudski, marching legions, and a map of the Polish Commonwealth after the return of Polish independence in 1918. That's it for this week. You can find much more dissected disinformation on our website, StopFake.org. And if you like our digest, share it, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and ring the bell to get notified. As always, be vigilant, look out for fakes, and if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, forward it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.